Having a poor opinion of yourself, it's more than just a bad feeling, isn't it? It can actually become this vicious cycle that quietly messes with your relationships, your health, even your happiness. But here's the good news. That cycle can absolutely be broken. And that's exactly what we're going to walk through today.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by really getting what that internal struggle feels like. Then, we'll look at how it actually shows up in the real world. From there, we'll explore its ripple effects, and then we'll get to the most powerful tool for change: boundaries. And finally, we'll map out a clear path toward healing.
All right, so first things first, we have to start at the very core of the problem. What's really going on inside your head and your heart?
Let's just pause on that for a second, because this question goes so much deeper than just, feeling down on yourself now and then. At its very root, what does it really mean?
Well, Very Well Mind defines it as an overall poor sense of self-value. But here's the key distinction. It's not just about disliking parts of yourself. It's that core belief, the belief that you don't actually deserve love. And when you believe that, you start to devalue everything about you, your thoughts, your feelings, even your biggest goals.
And this internal struggle, it often leads to a pattern we call codependency. Psych Central describes it as constantly putting someone else first, so much so that you literally forget where you end and your partner begins. It's kind of the natural result when you just stop valuing your own needs.
So how does this internal feeling actually, manifest on the outside? Because it doesn't just stay in your head, right? It shows up in very specific telltale ways in our actions and how we behave.
Do any of these sound a little familiar? Very Well Mind points out that all that negative self-talk inside eventually spills out into our actions. Think about it: having trouble accepting a simple compliment, finding it almost impossible to ask for what you need, and then there are the two big ones: a total lack of boundaries and being a constant people pleaser. It all comes from looking for validation from the outside world when you just don't have it on the inside. And this brings us right back to those themes of codependency. Sex Central highlights basically the same patterns: self-sacrifice, an intense focus on other people, and, this is the really crucial one, your self-worth becomes completely dependent on what other people think of you. And let me tell you, that is a recipe for absolute exhaustion.
So, what happens when these behaviors just play out over and over time? Well, this is where we start to see the true cost, that ripple effect that low self-worth has across your entire world.
And that's really the core idea here. It is a vicious cycle. What starts as this internal feeling of worthlessness creates behaviors that lead to real-world problems, which then just reinforce that original feeling of worthlessness. Let's break that down a bit more.
Okay, in our relationships, this cycle can be just devastating. The Jed Foundation points out some classic outcomes. Like when you don't feel worthy of even voicing your needs, resentment just slowly builds up. You might feel stuck in a relationship, staying because you feel you have to, not because you're happy. Or you might end up looking for that validation somewhere else, just trying to fill a void that feels impossible to fill at home.
And this cycle hits your health hard too, often through financial stress, which can be linked to things like not asking for a raise or overspending to make other people happy. Helpguide.org lists some pretty serious consequences: insomnia, anxiety, depression, and even physical problems like high blood pressure and heart disease. This stuff isn't just in your head, it is in your body.
And if you need one statistic to really drive this point home, here it is. A study from the University of Nottingham found that people struggling with debt are more than twice as likely to also suffer from depression. So yeah, the link between our financial health and our mental health isn't just real, it is incredibly strong.
So how do we stop this cycle? How do we break it? Well, there is a key. There is a single tool that is the most powerful and actionable way to start protecting your self-worth. And that is the power of boundaries.
So what are they really? Well, helpguide.org defines them as the rules or limits you create for how other people are allowed to behave towards you. And the goal is simple, but honestly profound. It's to ensure your own physical and emotional comfort. It's all about you defining what is and is not okay for you.
Now, what's fascinating is that unhealthy boundaries actually come in two totally opposite flavors. You've got porous boundaries, that's where you overshare everything and can't say no. But then there are rigid boundaries, where you build up walls and shut everyone out. That's just as unhealthy. The goal is to find that healthy middle ground. Boundaries that are clear but also flexible, so you can know what you need and actually communicate it.
So how do you actually do this? It's really a four-step process. First, you have to get super clear with yourself on what you want. Then you communicate it calmly using I statements. Third, and this is so crucial, you state the consequence. What will happen if this boundary is ignored? And finally, and this is often the hardest part, you have to enforce it. Because remember this, a boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion.
Setting boundaries is that huge first step, but building a lasting sense of self-worth, well, that requires a longer-term path of healing and consistent practice. So let's take a look at what that involves. Okay, this is the deep internal work. And if you look at these core practices from Very Well Mind, you'll see they're the direct antidotes to low self-esteem. Instead of devaluing yourself, you practice self-acceptance. Instead of that constant negative self-talk, you actively challenge those thoughts. Ultimately, it's about learning to treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion you'd show a good friend.
And you know, there are so many practical things you can do every single day to support this internal shift. Getting active, keeping a gratitude journal, surrounding yourself with people who actually lift you up. And this one is huge, celebrating your wins, no matter how small they seem. It all helps to rewire your brain to see your own value.
And this is so important to say out loud. This journey can be really tough, and you absolutely do not have to do it alone. Seeking professional help isn't admitting defeat. It is an act of courage and a powerful investment in yourself.
If you're wondering where to even start, this list from the National Institute of Mental Health is a fantastic resource. You can talk to your doctor, use national helplines, or check with your job's employee assistance program. And crucially, if you are ever in a crisis, 988 is available 24/7. Help is out there.
So really, this whole journey, it begins with a single step. After everything we've talked about, I want to leave you with this question. What is one small, clear boundary you can set today? It doesn't have to be some world-changing event, but it can be the very first move that starts to break that cycle, and the first piece of proof you give yourself that you are absolutely worthy of your own care and protection.